Today I want to teach you that readers think about how characters may fit more than one archetype, and how they do and do not fit the archetypes. By doing this kind of thinking, readers can come to know the characters better. Let's try thinking about how characters fit and don't fit archetypes. We'll organize our thinking about how characters do and do not fit archetypes by first thinking whether a character represents more than one archetype. Then we'll also consider whether a character fulfills one part of an archetype but not other parts. Think with me about Star Blossom. First, does she fit more than one archetype? Let's look at the chart. I'm thinking she's a villain, but also she might also be a sidekick. She seems to go along with Top Girl. What are you thinking? So Star Blossom fits more than one archetype, both a villain and a sidekick. Now let's see if we can also try that second way of thinking. Are there parts of her that are and parts that are not a typical villain or a typical sidekick? To do that thinking, we're going to have to ask ourselves, what is a typical villain? I'm thinking that a typical villain is apt to be someone cruel and evil, right? I could also say that I see the villain as someone who has a lot of power. The villain is often threatening to topple the hero. And in dystopian stories, the villain is often the one enforcing the awful rules that aren't good for most of society. Now we'll have to ask ourselves, are there parts of Star Blossom that are typical of a villain? Are there parts of her that aren't typical? Let's think about that for a moment. I'm thinking that she is cruel and mean. She does horrific things to Sunny, right? But she isn't very powerful. She's missing her horn, her wings, and her voice, and she's not the one calling the shots. It seems to be more that she's following Top Girl's lead. Now, let's think about how she is and is not a typical sidekick. She is a companion to Top Girl, and she certainly seems less powerful than Top Girl. I think in those ways, she is a typical sidekick. But she sort of veers off from being a typical sidekick when she destroys Sunny. Maybe she's just doing Top Girl's bidding, but she is the ringleader in the most violent scene in the story, which seems to give her more power than a typical sidekick. All of this is making me think differently than I first did about Star Blossom. Is it changing your thinking too? For example, I used to think she was mostly cruel, but now I see that she also suffered, so I feel a little bit of sympathy for her. That doesn't change how vicious she was, but it's sort of like life, isn't it? In life, it can help us deal with bullying to understand that a bully may have been picked on too, even though we still want that bully to stop. And in stories, doing this work can help to develop a more nuanced understanding of a character and make our thinking more complex and interesting. So readers, to do this sort of thinking in your books, first choose a character with which you can do this sort of thinking. Next, ask, does the character fit more than one archetype? Do all parts of the character fit all parts of the archetype? By thinking this way about characters, we can start to think about them a little differently. We can start to see that they are more than they seem on the surface. In dystopian novels, you'll find that authors often make characters interesting in this way, by complicating the archetypes they fill. Back in the lesson platform, you'll try this work with your book by choosing a character to analyze as well.